As most of you know, I worked in local television in the news for over 30 years. And I'll tell you, you don't do that without getting way, way too close to murder cases. Dozens, if not hundreds of them. And you don't do that kind of reporting without a tremendous kind of psychic cost. And so it's with great dismay that I look and see how murder on the daily is turned into just fodder for entertainment, whether it's television or streaming or even in the podcasting world. And I determined that the way I would cover murder when I bumped into it in my podcast, in this podcast, is not as entertainment, not as, violent, almost porn. It's really repugnant. It's obscene what has taken place where violence is viewed as a commodity, something to sell as really low-hanging fruit. And I say that because this week's episode concerns a murder from decades ago, and most murders are not exotic or entertaining in the least. I will tell you, they're horrific, and they just ripple out over the generations. The trauma just goes on unless you do profound healing, as this week's guest did. So be forewarned. And that said, she has a remarkable story of hope and resilience. So I hope you get a lot out of it. Thanks.
I was being a complete bitch after I got married, and he was like, "What's up with you?" I'm like, "Look, I know it's only a matter of time before you're leaving anyway."
What is the sound of one man listening? This is Man Listening, a fresh podcast featuring the stories of strong women who bounce back. Man Listening, because every woman deserves to be heard.
Hi, my name's Stuart Watson, and this is Man Listening, and I'm sitting with my new friend, Karen. Where were you born?
I was born in Dayton, Ohio.
Hospital or home?
Oh, hospital, for sure. Didn't spend a lot of time there. My siblings and my mother, we were rescued by my uncles and brought back to Michigan when I was probably about 2 years old.
Rescued, you say rescued, what do you mean?
Yeah, my dad had a tough time coming home and paying the mortgage.
Coming home from work?
Right, well, wherever he was.
You made it sound like coming home from war. Was it coming home from work? And the paycheck didn't make it all the way home.
Yeah, the paycheck never seemed to make it home. Yeah, he had a tough time with groceries, and...
did the bar tab get paid?
I think the bar tab got paid, and the electricity wasn't getting paid, the groceries weren't getting bought. And ironically, his aunt called my mother's brothers. They're right outside of Detroit, and apprised them of the situation. They came and got us, and then so we moved into my my uncle's home with my grandmother.
And do you get along with the grandmother and the uncles and everybody? Did you get along with them?
Yeah, I mean, I was just a child. I mean, I'm the baby. There's 5 of us with 15 years in between. So my sister was 15, 3 boys in the middle, and I was just a little girl.
The baby girl.
Just the baby girl. Yeah. I mean, it was fine. I mean, it's all I knew. All I knew. So.
But it wasn't like run away from home.
No.
But by the same token, did you know your dad?
No. Well, no, he would, I didn't know him. I longed for him desperately because, I always wanted him to come and get me. And, he would say he was coming and just wouldn't show up. So that was, that left a big hole in my psyche and my self-worth. And I mean, that happened more times. I mean, he would show up, in a nice big Cadillac and take me and my brother at the time, he was the only one left at home, and take us to a fancy steak restaurant and drop us off. But he never paid child support or alimony. So that was all on my mom.
He dropped you off at the steak restaurant, or he would take you out?
He would take us out for a nice steak dinner.
And then he'd just drop you off back at home?
Yeah.
So it's like one big show
right.
of affection, and then silence.
Then radio silence for 7, 8, 9 years.
Oh my word.
Yeah, no, I think I only saw him maybe 5 times my entire life, I think. And one of those was at my sister's funeral. Yeah, maybe about 5 times.
And what I have a hard time understanding, help me understand, is for a girl in particular, when a little girl grows up without a father, or really a father figure. I mean, there are men around, but there's not one guy, who is your father,
right,
who shows up. In your experience, what impact did that have? Like, you always wanted him to be there, but he wasn't. And so long term, what did that mean?
It compromised my self-worth. It's so funny because when, it's like lack of daddy issues, we all kind of know what that means.
Yeah.
I mean, I went looking for love and acceptance. I thought that I had to physically show love to get love. I mean, and that was, it's very difficult. The male role, I had men in my life, but they weren't healthy men at all. I mean, they were abusive and sick. And so that was, it's like what I grew up with. I mean, it was just a big gaping hole. And, it's the abandonment thing. It's going right back to abandonment, which is such a common theme in so many people's lives that, I 58 years later, it's like I'm finally finding my way out of the whole abandonment.
And how?
I mean, I finally got into recovery 11 years ago, and, stopped, trying to find something else to fill that hole. My abandonment issues go so much deeper. When we moved back, to Detroit, my mom worked 24/7 to support
What
5
kind of
kids.
work?
She actually sold women's clothing.
Oh my word!
Yes, kind of ironic. And she was really incredible. I mean, she built a team of women, and encouraged them. She was a woman's liber, before she even realized she was one, because she was so diminished from the treatment of my father that she really had to build herself up and build her esteem. She was just minimized by the time we made it to Michigan, and she just really had to work very, very hard to build herself back up. But she wasn't present for me. So I really was kind of on my own. My older siblings, they were so much older than me. They weren't in the home, so I was like off on my own at a very early age.
And what did that look like? Like, what did you do with that?
When I was 4 years old, my best friend moved in a door down from me, and her family became my family. And they were from Tennessee. The mother was 15 when she got pregnant by her father, who was a coal miner. I think he was like in his 30s, like late 30s or so. And they had 3 boys. So we were the same age. They moved in when we were 4, and I spent all my time at their house. So they really were like my family. As dysfunctional as it was, and it's funny, I think if my mother, it was very convenient for me to spend all my time over there because my mom didn't have to worry about me. So, my grandmother was getting up there in age, and so it was just easy. It's like, oh, I'm going to go over to Sandy's house. Good, she could deal with her thing. Now the problem was that house. There was a lot of severe alcoholism, abuse going on. Never any abuse directed at me, but I witnessed a lot of abuse.
And so people yelling at one another and
beating the wife, beating the kids. And her mother, who was really like, it was so strange because she lived her parallel teenage life in conjunction with my girlfriend. Because she never had it. She got pregnant at 15. So it's like, it was a very weird dynamic. She was my girlfriend's mother, but she was like my friend. So the mother and
she wanted to pal around. She didn't want to be a parent. She wanted to get that.
She wanted to scratch that itch.
Right.
Yeah. And we would smoke cigarettes together. Was so much,
it'd be bad.
Yeah, it'd be bad. We were being bad together. We would drink together, smoke cigarettes.
What'd you drink?
Oh, like whatever. Like whiskey. I hate whiskey. But the drinking was very rare. That was like very sporadic. That didn't really come into play until just a little bit later, but not much. But it was just that kind of sneakiness element. But they were my family. And then one day she decided to leave the abuse, and rightfully so. And so she left him with the 4 kids. That's a whole different story I can't even remotely get into right now. But he had weapons in the house. He had a couple of deer guns and whatnot. And I'll never forget, I think I was 14 years old. I was getting my first permanent. And she called me because she was home visiting. And she's, hey, I'm home, come and see me. And I was like, oh, Lucille's home, I'm gonna go home and run over there and see her. And my mom said, you can go. She says, but if you leave, she was getting ready to give me my first permanent. And to get my mom to spend time with me to do something, that was a big deal. I wanted to get my big hair action going on. So I said, let's go ahead and do the permanent. And thank God. God was looking after me that day, because as soon as I had those perm rods out of my hair, I was running across those yards and I heard the boom, boom. And he shot her at the kitchen table.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
He killed her?
Yeah.
And did you see this?
No, I was running across the yard when it happened. And, and I look back in my mind's eye, all I remember is the feel of the gunshot noise going up through my legs. And it feels so far away. It was like almost kind of being suspended in animation. And I remember him running out into the street and falling face down. And then the kids running out after him. And then the grandmother. And, I have to say that incident wiped my hard drive. Back in the 70s, you didn't go to therapy. Well, at least we didn't, that just wasn't, that wasn't in the cards. So what actually ended up happening that night, I actually went, they arrested him, and I went and spent the night with the kids that night, and at their aunt's house. We were all in shock, and the next morning, we pulled into their driveway. Now it was a crime scene, right? And the aunt and uncle walked in the house, grabbed the kids' clothes, and in my mind's eye, I remember walking out and looking in the house, which I shouldn't have. They grabbed the kids' clothes and they went out the driveway, and I never saw them So I mean, so that day,
That was the end
that was the end.
of your best friend, your peer, and also your buddy who would smoke cigarettes and
Well, they were my family. I mean, they were my family. But they always joked about, when are we just going to send over the adoption papers? When are we just going to send over the adoption
oh
papers?
my God. So it was like almost like I'm kind of a mom figure or a buddy figure or a family.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as abusive as it was, I mean, they were my family. And the crazy thing is, I mean, and it took me, I don't know how many years where I did not think about it every day. And you know, and so kind of, I was kind of, you know, so it's kind of like, it's like a double whammy abandonment thing going on.
What do you mean? Double?
Well, you know, it's like you know, the rejection from my father, which he was just selfish. You know, I look back on that. He had his demons. And, you know, I feel sorry for him. I really feel sorry for him. But it's like it was like an obsessive thought about my father, being abandoned by my father, and then having my second family ripped away from me, that really kind of just, you know, left me spiraling in a way. I had to care for my grandmother during the week because she was really getting elderly. So my whole life just kind of changed. Every weekend I would go spend with my sister and her husband and help her care for her son. And that was a dysfunctional environment too.
So sounds like there was no time either for you to process. There was no one you could go to, no minister, no therapist, but you couldn't go to your mom either and talk this through.
No. And you know what? It's like, God, it's like all of a sudden, it's like I feel, it's so funny making that head-to-heart connection.
Right.
No, you know who I processed with? I processed over a bottle of vodka. I'll never forget, I had a boyfriend. This was after I moved to DC, and I was probably about 22 at the time. He says, why do you talk about that all the time? It's like, well, you know, why do I talk about that all the time? Because it's because I'm so sick. Of course, I didn't know that then. You know, it just kind of played itself out in many different ways. You know, and you know, I found solace at my sister's house, but you know, my sister was married to a heroin addict. And so then everything, and I have to laugh because at the time, and everything that goes on with that whole scene, you know, sketchy characters, unsafe environment, things going missing, money getting stolen. And, you know, and so I kind of grew up around that. But that was my normal, right? I have such empathy for people don't know what they don't know. People don't know what they don't know.
You mean they don't know another way is possible?
Yeah, they don't know another way. It's like, what's your exposure? I mean, that's your reality. And so, I mean, and I thank God, when the best thing that happened to me was moving out of the Detroit area when I was, I think I was 19 at the time, and I moved to Alexandria, Virginia, and that was a new lease on life for me. Eventually, but it's like everything. I still took Karen with me, you know. So wherever you go, there you are. my mom, and God bless my mom. You know, she became disabled right around that time. That's a whole different story.
Disabled in what way?
She started, you know, once all of it, we were all older, and, you know, she started making money. She was a fantastic saleswoman. And, she worked so hard. She had some extra money. She wanted to get her eyes done. Okay. So she went and got her eyes done. And
You don't mean LASIK, you mean the...
No, she went get the bags, little plastic surgery
got
action.
them pulled back.
Right. And she went to go visit my brother while she was recuperating, and he drove her to the airport, and the seatbelts weren't working, and she didn't want to get in the car without the seatbelts. Well, National Airport was 5 minutes away. Don't worry about it. Well, they got rear-ended. She got sent into the windshield, and her face collapsed. So they had to wait for everything to solidify before they could do surgery. And while she was waiting on all of that, she passed out. They found out she had significant heart damage because she had rheumatic fever, several years earlier, and the doctor said, suck it up and you're fine, go back to work. In the meantime, all this heart damage had taken place. She was the number one. She was one of the first women hired at Metropolitan Life in the Metro Detroit area. And
At the insurance?
yeah, and that was a big deal back then.
Amen.
Yeah, first woman to be hired, and she made $1 Million Round Table.
Wow.
And right after that, she became disabled. And so, so she went from being this women's lib mom, and it's so funny, she used to get Ms. magazines. She didn't have time to read them, but I did. So,
it seemed like Ms. was not like Cosmo. Cosmo was all the way about the sex and the Cosmo girl, whereas Ms. was about
female empowerment.
Exactly.
Yeah, burn your bra.
And be your own person in the world. Get paid what you're worth.
Exactly.
Be your own person. You don't need a man.
Exactly. And so it was so funny because that's the kind of way I was raised. It's like, I don't need you. Speaking about a man, I can't count on you. I'll never forget after I got married, I was being a complete bitch after I got married. And he was like, what's up with you? I'm like, look, I know it's only a matter of time before you're leaving anyway. That's really the mindset that I had, is that, I can't count that I know I'm going to have to go this alone, and I can't turn to God because he's got bigger fish to fry because I got this. I'm good. Yeah.
So, do you think it was you and your husband were not compatible, or do you think it was just you could have had the perfect husband, but it was the abandonment stuff until you got that resolved?
Oh, you know what? I'm sure there's many men I could have married before I met my husband, but I was so damaged and so broken. And I think, God love him. It's like we kind of found each other at the right time. And we're divorced now. And
you all get along, or you?
We get along well now. It's like we both have our demons.
But you don't have kids together.
Oh yeah, I have a 22-year-old son.
Oh, with him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, did you get along for the sake of the kid, or you just?
No, yeah, I think we coexisted for a very, very, very long time.
But now you're like, okay, if there's an event or something.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and that was my goal, was to be able to. My goal was to be able to live, and I worked hard at that too. I was going to be the poster divorcee for getting along with my husband. I never want my son to be in a position where he has to second guess about who he's going to invite over for dinner, or he has to keep his parents separated because there's going to be a war. I'm not going to put my son through that.
What I don't understand is how someone who father's never around, except for the steak dinners,
right,
and sees a surrogate family, sees the man murder the woman, how you were ever able to trust any man after that. You got a boyfriend now,
right,
and you tolerate his chickens, for God's sake. How do you get from men leave, that's what they do, they're going to leave you no matter what, to
Here's a all right, so
How do you do that?
here's the crazy thing. I love men. But no, let me stop. Let me just tell you something. Let me finish. Listen, Stuart. No, I'm sorry. You just left me wide open for that one.
I was being bad.
I know.
I was being bad, but I gotta know this.
The funny, it's weird. I always had, even with that, I was always more of a man's woman than a woman's woman. And it's strange to me now because you pose that to me. Now I really have to think about this because I've never really thought about it. I had 3 older brothers, and I have worked in a lot of male-dominated industries where, I was one of the few women around. And I developed empathy for men along the way. I was, there's a lot of different ways that I was kind of able to, it's like, I wasn't the president of the She-Man Haters Club. That's not really who I was. And interestingly for me, I've been in an industry where I have spent a lot of one-on-one time with men, okay? And I sell to men predominantly, and I have for the past 30 years. And that is something that I feel so fortunate because I get to know men on a very one-on-one basis, develop relationships, and I'm able to communicate to them how vital their relationship is with their daughters, and the women, not so much the women in their life, but their daughters, or their wives, and I have a gift that people tend to open up to me and trust me. And I've been able to work through so many dialogues that I really feel were divinely inspired. It's a gift that has been a roadway for healing. Specifically, I can't get into that right now because we don't have enough time. But that coupled with finally going into recovery. If you walk upstairs, I have a treasure trove of self-help books, as so many people who've suffered from addiction have. I'm no different. And when I say that, I get that, then that. It's like anything. It's like, I know I can be fixed. And nothing was going to fix me until I was able to put down my best friend and my lover, and which was my anesthetizer, alcohol. And once I was able to really put that down and process everything, people are people, okay, and we all have a story, and my hurts are. And we all have a different way. It's like, but we're all suffering from some kind of soul sickness, especially those of us. And the beautiful thing about recovery is getting the opportunity to unpack that, turn over the stones, make that head to heart connection. And so in making that head to heart connection, I can say that, all X happened, Y happened, Z happened, and be very methodical in knowing, yes, all of those things happened, but once you make that head to heart connection, and I am willing to feel what actually happened and cry it out and process it, it has to be done for the healing to take place. And it probably took me 5 years, maybe 6 years into recovery to be able to love myself, okay? I had a slew of unhealthy relationships. My relationship with my husband wasn't healthy because there was too much scar tissue there, probably on both of our parts. And I wish today, that I could go back and heal that for both of us. Very difficult, because whoever you're in a relationship with, it's like they see it through their reality, and I see it through my reality. I can tell you one relationship that was able to be healed, which I think is probably a very cool way to kind of wrap up what happened with my best friend. I got a phone call from her daughter 10 years ago. Oh no, 11 years ago. It was 11 years ago. I had just started my journey into recovery. And her daughter, she reached out to me. Her daughter found me on Facebook. Well, I was open that door of Pandora's box. And I had breast cancer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I had breast cancer. And, I put that, I talked about it on Facebook. I saw that she had breast cancer.
The daughter?
The mother, my best friend that we had never really talked to. I hadn't had any contact with. She reached out to me, and I said, "I'm sorry, I can't do this. I had to get better." And so after I went through my reconstruction and whatnot, years later, probably 8 years later, I went down and visited her. And we kind of walked that. And it was so funny. I hadn't seen her since we were 14.
And how had she done?
The funny thing is, you know what she said to me? She says, "Karen, she says, I really thought I would have ended up being the alcoholic."
Well, it's not mutually exclusive. You could be.
Right. No, but the funny thing is, it's like what she went through.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
But
she had, yeah. But it was, we were able to reconnect. And so I flew her. She married a man that she loved. She has not had an easy life by any stretch of the imagination, but she has a family who loves her and has a lot of faith in God, and I am so grateful for that. But the funny thing is, so I decided for my 10th anniversary last year, I flew her here, and she saw me get my 10-year chip, and we cuddled in bed and talked and engaged in that intimacy. Do we talk all the time today? No, we don't. Our lives are so fundamentally different. I love her like a sister, but we don't have a lot in common. But I do love her, and it was to be able to have that kind of intimacy with another person, and to wrap her in my heart. That's something that I wasn't capable of before, and that has been part of the healing process.
Nobody gets out of here alive, and we have these really big wounds. And this is a very violent culture. So can you speak into how that healing, because you're sitting here, you're a vibrant young woman.
The reality is, one, I think because I was raised Catholic, and I had a fundamental, and I thank God for this, even though, there's a lot of guilt and shame wrapped up in that, but it was, it's like a fundamental compass of right and wrong. That's why I think it's so important to instill in kids some kind of compass that they have some reference of comparison, and that you have to talk about it. Yes, I talked about this ad nauseum, trying to process it out. Resilience. It's resilience. It's like, damn it. It's like, I am not going to let this define me, even though I let a lot of this define me throughout the years. But it's that fundamental quest of survival, and I have been very fortunate. I really feel I have had things happen to me in my life, and the people that have come into my life that have ministered to me, prior to getting into recovery, that threw out breadcrumbs of hope to me and to try to steer me on the right path.
Like what? Give me an example. Like, who was somebody who appeared at the right moment to say something or to do something that...
It always came from my work. It always came from my work. It didn't come from my personal relationships. My very first sales job, David Ostrike up in New York, and he was tough, take off his wooden leg and throw it against the wall, and expletives coming out of his. I'm trying to keep this clean. I'm not, I love David.
But, New Yorker.
Yeah, true New Yorker. And it was my first real job after working in bars and restaurants. It was my first real sales job, and he instilled so much confidence in me. And he was the first man in my life to not have an ulterior motive to get in my pants or objectify me in any kind of way that made me and helped me to believe in myself and instill a sense of I know you're a hustler. I started working a 24-hour diner when I was 16, but to take that and to be my best, and I won all kinds of awards and trips and so on and so forth, and that really instilled in me that okay, I can survive at a better level, and really raise the expectations of myself. Once I moved to DC, I was this blue collar, gum smacking, big haired Newport smoking,
From Detroit
from
City.
Detroit City, and I'm like, I land in DC, with no education, and topsiders, what are those, and I was very blessed to be befriended by some women who elevated me to a greater. They took this blue collar girl and they exposed me to the finer things in life. I had I have a very dear friend of mine, Suzanne. Suzanne and Virginia were the primary women in my lives, and she came from a very political family, and where we would go to her grandfather's house, and there would be ambassadors there or what have you, and he was very well known in the civil rights movement, and I was exposed to a world that I was just never exposed to when I lived in.
Why did those people do that, do you think?
What's that? Why did they?
Why would they do that?
They were just my girlfriends.
Yeah, but what did they see in you? What do you think?
I was a lot of fun, Stuart.
I know. You're still a lot of fun.
No, what it
ton
was?
Of fun.
It was just friends. It's like I wasn't I wasn't a street urchin or anything like that. No, it's like I always had a light of life in me. And you know what? It's not them. It's just life. It's just people, it's like you just attract people in your life. Mm-hmm. I can't tell you. I have, in spite of where I've come from, okay, I have had an amazing, amazing life. And I've traveled, different points around the world. I've spent, time in China and Hong Kong and meeting people. And there's just, I don't know, I think it's just something in my spirit that was it was dead for a long time, but like little glimmers of hope. There's always hope, as long as there's a glimmer of hope. And, I try to instill that in people. I don't know why. I wish I knew why. If I knew what it was, Stuart, I would put it in a bottle and we could get rich from it, You know what it is? It's just picking yourself up by the bootstraps, suiting up and showing up and getting out there and not being afraid of your shadow. I spent so many years afraid of my shadow, but it's like it's just to find the courage. Oh, it's so funny. I had to school myself. You know what turned the other thing that turned things around for me? Just like I had to school myself. I've had maybe 2 years of formal education on and off because I was always out there trying to make money, right? That survival. I was always in a place of survival mode. But it's like I had to coach myself again, Zig Ziglar, Tony Robbins. I would mainline Tony Robbins, and my life just took off. It's like at some point we just have to be responsible for our own destiny.
Yeah.
And just and figure it out.
So, are you a human spirit person? Are you a higher power person? Are you a synchronicity person? A random molecules person?
No, I'm not a random molecules. I'm a higher power person.
But what does that look like? Like, how does that intervene? Well, tell me a quick story. What was your last drink? Paint me a picture.
Of my last drink. I was very fortunate in that I didn't have a horrible rock bottom. I had an emotional rock bottom. And I had 7 gentle nudges from my higher power.
And what did those look like?
I started doing yoga. And I would be in my downward dog and say, God, please help me stop drinking. Please help me stop drinking. And I manifested my recovery in a sense.
And why did you want to stop?
Because I saw my life slipping out from underneath my feet. I was in a marriage. We were both unhappy. My son was 11 years old when I got into recovery. And here's the thing, is that I never wanted my drinking to put my son in a vulnerable position. And I could see my husband didn't drink, and then he started drinking again and was very unpredictable. I couldn't count on my designated driver. I knew that I had to quit. I was also at a party and I saw all of the parents doing shots and drinking, and out of the periphery of my eye, I could see all of these young kids watching their parents. And I had some fundamental aha moment where I knew, I was like, okay, this is not good. This is not good. My son's 11 years old, and I can see where this is going right now. And truthfully, I really felt like it would be easier to be dead than alive, because there was so much pain inside me and just so much funk that I powered through my entire life and put on a happy face and actually had a successful career. Nothing really bad happened. I always skated
DUIs.
No.
Losing custody of the child.
None of that. I mean, nothing. I never cheated on my husband. I have been insular in my life with my pain, and so much pain inside me that I really couldn't process. And it was like, I have a bubbly personality. I'm outgoing. I'm lively. I can talk the pain off a wall if I have to. Mm-hmm. Don't like to anymore these days. But it was always putting myself out there. I lost that. So towards the end of my recovery, I could not talk to my next door neighbor. That I know everything was crumbling out beneath my feet. I completely lost my sense of self and became so insular, and I had lost who I was.
Now it seems like you have this really rich, healthy, vibrant community around you.
Oh yeah.
You have all these girlfriends and guy friends, but I mean, you have all these women.
I have more friends than I know.
Sisterhood.
Yeah, the sisterhood and the brotherhood. I have more people in my life. And the beautiful thing, I didn't blow up any of my relationships from drinking. A lot of people, when they found out I was in recovery, they were like, huh? No way, I would have never pegged you. But there's a lot of people like me walking around like that. Yeah. A lot of people. And, but the people who really knew me, like, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you. And, and it's like my message is a message of hope. There's a reason I'm still living. There's a reason I'm still on this earth, and that's to carry my message to other people who are suffering in so many different ways. And
your message is?
My message is hope, but you have got to talk. You've got to talk about it. You know, it's so easy to hide, and men especially. It's to hide behind this whole,
I'm good, I'm fine.
Yeah, I'm good, I'm fine.
I'm fine. No,
yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah. It's like, if you aren't dealing with some kind of shame or guilt, you're not having a human experience. I see what happens, I hear so many stories, and the way, men's lives, and, it's like not being able to deal with their issues, therapies for pussies. You know what I mean? I don't need to talk about it.
I sit across from them all the time.
Right, exactly. And it's like those little fundamental changes. It's like if you just have the balls to look at yourself, and and that's the great thing about recovery. Who else takes the rocks in their lives and turns them over and looks at them and deals with them? And there's so much healing to be had. And it doesn't matter. I mean, it's like a recovery program or what have you. But it's like we can all be better. We can all be better, but we have to have the courage to look.
And it's almost like it takes a life or death kind of a thing for men to be willing to do that.
Sadly, yeah.
And women.
And and women, yeah. But it's like, I look at so many things, like people, the things that go on in their lives, and they don't have the tools to really be able to deal with things, like to put them in perspective. It's like to know, the one thing about, not the one thing, the thing about being in recovery, it has given me a handbook on how to live my life successfully, and to learn how to love myself and to really love others.
If you get hit by lightning today and all that survives is this little piece of audio, what do you think your legacy is? What would people say about you at the memorial? Karen's gift to me was, Karen's gift to this world was?
Honesty. I think that it's like Karen's gift was, it's like that I was someone that they could come to, and they could expose themselves without fear and judgment. And that's a gift that I don't take lightly. I know that I've put good out into the world. There's absolutely no question. There's no question. And I think part of that is continuing to be being resilient and showing that there's hope. I own that I've helped a lot of people in my time prior to recovery and in recovery. And that's just been really just a gift from the universe or my higher power. If I go tomorrow, it's okay. It's okay. I mean, it's okay. It's like, I know, I hope God, I don't think God's going to be disappointed in me.
I honor and acknowledge all that you've done for these men and women by your mere presence.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for doing this.
You're going to make me cry.
Well, you make me cry. Thank you for sharing.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, Stuart.
I met Karen through a friend of a friend, and since then, she and I we'll get on the phone and talk for more than an hour. She's just got an amazing story. Thank you, Karen, for sharing.
Man Listening is a production of Unmediated LLC in cooperation with the Queen City Podcast Network and Balto Creative Media. Allison Andrews at Andrews Creative and Rachel Clapp-Miller are developmental producers. Sally Higgins at Higgins & Owens tries to keep us legal. Our music is A Day at the Park by the group Pictures of the Floating World. Your announcer is Catherine Smith. That's me. Please go to our Patreon page. You'll find us at patreon.com. Look for Man Listening, one word, no spaces. We hope you'll join us by becoming a member. A small investment can raise up the conversation. If you want exclusive member merch like a t-shirt, we can arrange that too.
A huge shout out and a thank you to everyone who has supported Man Listening from the very beginning. We could not do this without you, and I really appreciate it.
Don't forget to support us at Patreon. We believe one voice can change the conversation. Click the subscribe button, and next week you'll hear.
Went into the plane for the very first time, and we were going to go to the United States of America. We're going to go to Gringo Land, and life is going to be beautiful. It's going to be amazing. And then we arrived at this little place in the Bronx, New York, and I just felt so disappointed.
That's next week on Man Listening. Thanks.